Well then, I realized I should probably just get this over with. Yes, I'm an author that hasn't publicly shared my writing before 2025, despite working on my debut trilogy for well over a decade. I'm certain no AI could spit out anything close to the nuance and passion of my story, but there are plenty of folks who are paranoid that anyone who isn't already an established name is probably using AI. The sad part about it is that there's no guarantee the established names aren't, even if only because their publishers are starting to. So, let's put any worries to rest and get everything out in the open. This will be a full, nuanced discussion of the topic of generative artificial intelligence. I'll try to maintain any civil discourse in the comments, but I will remove hate for either side. This is not a place to argue, but good faith debate is welcome. And yeah, I told myself I wasn't going to write a full script, but some of these bullet points are getting out of hand, so I guess I'm writing more script than outline to fully and clearly enunciate my thoughts. So before we get to my feelings, some facts. If none of what I'm about to say makes sense, no worries. The human speak part comes after. I'm just covering this as a programmer before I get into the rest of the video as an artist, animator, and now author. I'll spare you the entire deep dive monologue and just try to hit some key points. Generative artificial intelligence is a form of machine learning, and language learning models, LLMs, are not terribly unique. They're just a variation of neural network for the most part. It sounds fancy, but it's just code. At a conceptual level, an LLM is not terribly different from YouTube's infamous algorithm. At the most reductive level, it is just like any other code because it receives inputs and returns outputs based on its design. If you feed a single data point into one of these systems, that algorithm will spit out that single data point in its entirety every time for every prompt. So without some form of data curation, LLMs wouldn't be able to parse prompts at all. The training data and dataset curation for most, if not all, LLMs are to some degree being scraped off the internet. A portion of the accuracy of LLMs comes from the connection between the data and data curation maintaining its connection as the scraping is happening. The algorithms that are used for generative AI are exceptional at pattern recognition. They don't create, they just make predictions on what comes next, whether pixel or letter, based on their training data. Ergo, plagiarism. So, facts are done. What are my feelings on the topic? The most concise summary of my stance is simple. These algorithms being used to spit out generic stolen data raise the floor of art, not the ceiling. It is a travesty that they are being misapplied and abused before regulation and oversight will change the landscape, hopefully for the better. I anticipate Disney's current lawsuit will expedite that process. There is no gray area with the use of the current iterations of these generative AI systems, or at least the ones being marketed to the public as creative. With few exceptions, they are functional purely because of the volume of data that has been stolen to train them on. I'm no lawyer, but I'm confident fair use shouldn't cover something that detects patterns in copyrighted works, then spits them out after mixing them together. It would be like declaring that oranges in a blender become a new fruit. They will still have the color of oranges, smell like oranges, and taste like oranges. They're just oranges in a less clear and obvious form. The more fruit you add into the blender, the less clear it becomes where one fruit starts and the other fruit ends. But that's obfuscation, not creation. There will never be the flavor of a distinct fruit that was not added into the blender. There will never be a unique fruit created in a blender. Now then, before you accuse artists and writers of doing that with the works that inspire them, no. Just no. Using the same analogy, artists are more like farmers crossbreeding fruit and growing brand new plants that are hybrids of the breeding. The new plant may produce terrible fruit or amazing fruit, but it will still be a distinct fruit shaped by its heritage and the farmer's experience with the process. So, now that I've probably pissed off the pro-GenAI crowd, why do I not inherently and intrinsically hate anything related to current AI development? To begin with, I'm familiar enough with the subject to not have a knee-jerk reaction. It is the current applications and uses that are problematic, not the technology itself. This is further exacerbated by the average person having very little understanding beyond what the angry people screaming at them or the snake oil AI salesman marketing to them say. Ethical applications can and eventually will create useful tools for artists, animators, and other creatives to spend less time on tedium and more time creating. It will accelerate human works, not replace them. The technology is already being researched for a number of data analysis purposes beyond creative fields. Beyond that, ethical use cases for the average person are already being found. Scheduling, summary of messages like emails, and other reductive Other reduction of burdens on day-to-day life will become commonplace as soon as people stop believing these tools are intelligent. That marketing is causing trust and faith in code where it is wholly unwarranted. Always read important emails yourself, but feel free to accept the summaries of the AI being force-fed to the world on junk mail, or to decide when you have time to read the full messages. Treat it more like your spam folder than your friend. Sometimes you have to go searching for that email you were expecting and tell the spam system to stop eating those. There will eventually be a world where the annoying red squiggly default in most word processors is capable of detecting the pattern and knowing that Grajidarum Krockenburgerstopp III is a proper noun and should only get the red squiggly if it's misspelled compared to the other 100 times it appears in the novel. You know, the thing you can do by adding the proper noun to your word processor's dictionary? That's called training data. Yep, let that process for a bit. Where these algorithms will result in exceedingly useful tools are completely separate from their current use cases and the complications thereof. Tweening, for example, the blending between an animator's keyframes, will become more accurate. Color palette additions, both for art and home decor, can be enhanced or made more easily understood. Blending colors, pixel selection tools, the list goes on and on and on. So, above all else, try to remember when you're discussing generative AI on the internet that the person you're interacting with is a fellow human being, and that their feelings on the topic are valid, even if their information may be inaccurate. Yes, that applies to you as well. It applies to me as well. It applies to everyone. Be kind. The only real villains in this entire mess are the companies shilling code to you as intelligence, when it's just a really fancy data blender. Well, if you made it to the end, I appreciate you hearing me out. If you have nothing to add to the discussion, but still want to help with the video's engagement variable in YouTube's algorithm, just leave a comment that includes your favorite smoothie. But don't mention blenders or smoothies, let's have a little fun with it. Mine's taro. I love taro smoothies. So, that's all I got. Until next time, have a good one.